Welcome to TalentWise, the definitive podcast for CXOs, human resource and learning and development leaders. This show comes to you from thought leaders who talk about human capital development in today's organization. How to engage and empower today's employee to be effective, competitive and relevant. Stay with us for an exciting conversation with our guest and learn how to future-proof your team. I'm your host Shubhanjan, founder of KnowledgeBridge. Hello and welcome to a special episode of TalentWise where we talk about the future of work. We have been speaking to some of the best minds in the industry on how to future-proof your team. Quarter into our way this season today, we present a roundup of our discussion with the 6 eminent guests who appeared in the show and shared interesting and diverse thoughts over the last 6 weeks. On to our special episode. Our first guest, Dr. Sridhar Mitta, founder of NextWealth Entrepreneurs. When you started NextWealth, I know that you started with this distributed workforce and distributed model, and you have gone through a few revisions of that model. But more importantly, you are talking of technology-enabled work, yet one of the fallout of technology enablement is that people are going to lose some jobs. So can you talk a bit about that and talk about how you are interpreting it now?
See, everybody knows that technology is continuous. It happens all the time. But when multiple technologies happen at the same time, we get a resonance. So we get world-changing, world-beating products, for example, internet or cell phone. These kind of items came not because of one technology growth, but multiple technologies intersecting at a given point in time. This typically happens once in 10 years, 15 years. But what is happening today is many technologies are coalescing now together, and it creates a huge opportunity in which all the current industries has to be revised, opportunities for new companies to come in, and there is a danger of some of the existing companies may become irrelevant. So whether you are an individual or a company or a government or a NGO, you are not going to be left alone. The technology is going to affect. For want of better word, we are using the word digital technologies, which covers artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process automation, Internet of Things like that. All these technologies are interrelated, the contributing factors are same, and we need to address them. So when these things are coming in, one of the impact of these technologies is to do more of automation, which essentially means all work which was typically done by human beings through a process can be replicated by machines, which essentially implies that the number of jobs or varieties of jobs are going to come down. For a country of 1.3 billion population, it's a big danger we are getting into. Irrespective of what people may say, it is a fact that there are jobs being lost. But the interesting part is automation itself creates a new set of jobs for which you need a new set of skills. So the people who are losing jobs, unless they are retrained, not always possible, they will lose their jobs. The people who get jobs are different from the people who lose jobs. So it is essential that whether you are already working or you are a new person coming out of college, you have to get yourself trained in new technologies. The good thing what is happening here is there's a lot of opportunities available to import these technologies because large companies like Amazon, Intel, Microsoft, Google, they are offering varieties of courses on these new technologies for you to become self-sufficient. In addition to that, we have the MOOCs, massively open
Online courses,
which also will help you to become knowledgeable. So the technology is creating a change, creating new opportunities. Technology is also helping you to get trained for these things. So what the businesses have to do is to combine all these things into a viable, scalable, profitable business.
Our next guest, Ramesh Srinivas, co-founder and CEO of WorkSoGo. There is a huge amount of change that is happening. Computational power or computers are powering the change in the shift from the industrial to the knowledge society. From your experience and your vantage point, how do you see it impacting work?
I'll start with a couple of concrete examples of how it changes, because it's hard today to predict how it will change at a macro level. But at a micro level, at least I'm beginning to see significant signs of those change already with a number of customers, for example, that I work with today. So let me take one example, and let me take the example of people we often get in touch with, which is field sales. So if you look at field sales for financial services, for instance, some of the banks in India employ field sales people of between 60 to about 80 or 90,000 field sales. That's the field force that they have out in the market. Now that's a very large, massive number. One of the changes that appears to be very significant and driven by technology is the fact that a lot of, at least up until a few years ago, field sales people had to go out and get in touch with a large number of customers, right? So it was about them reaching out to people, getting leads and coming back in, etc. But today's digital allows the bank itself to get in touch through digital means with a host of customers, which means you don't necessarily need the salesperson going out and reaching out and kind of getting active leads or prospects into the system. That percentage of leads that are coming in through digital means is increasing. It has two significant impacts. Number one is the fact that if you want to call it, productivity of that salesperson goes up because they help in the closure part. Number two, more significant, is the number of job roles of that is going to come down. Right? You no longer over a period need 80,000. As the digital business picks up, that 80 will slowly start shrinking, right? Which automatically means that there is an impact on the kind of or the number of these opportunities that are going to come up, which today are a fairly significant number. That's the first. Second, which is even more interesting, is the fact that if you look at the field sales structure today of any of these large field forces, if you have 60,000, let's say, feet on street, for typically every 5 of them, you will have one first level supervisor. So 60,000 feet on street, you have 12,000 supervisors. And each of those 12,000, let's say each of those 5 or 6 of them, you will have another second level supervisor, right? Which goes into 2,000 or 3,000, let's say. So there are these layers of management that get built up. And the only role of that management really is monitoring the feet on street. Today, technology like AI allows people at the top to manage the field force without some of these intermediate layers. It's significant not only in job opportunities, but in saying historically people who are at that feet on street level, after a few years of experience, graduate up to becoming a manager, as we call them, right, or a supervisor and so on. But all of a sudden those opportunities are also limited. And that has a lot of implications for people in terms of saying, how do you stay relevant? Because you have two choices. Either you do the same job for a longer number of years, or you reskill yourself, because this going up and just managing is coming down as a set of opportunities. I don't have an answer.
Our third guest, Deba Prasad Adya, CEO KFC Business with Sapphire Foods. So do you see anything specific happening either in retail where you spend a lot of time or in the food services? Do you see anything that is basically changing and changing extremely rapidly vis-a-vis, say, 5 years back?
So couple of things. So one is two things in retail have changed based on technology. One is the whole issue of choice and inventory. As we know in retail, choice means inventory. And that has been a deterrent to expansion of retail profitably. Today, thanks to technology, that choice can be given without necessarily having distributed inventory. And that's where we talk about dark stores and then delivered to you and stuff like that. So there's one sort of change, technology-led change based on that, and then you talk of endless aisles and dark stores. The other change is in customer-facing aspects of the business. Simple, the sales process, cashiering, and stuff like that, which is also getting automated. I spoke of automatic kiosk for ordering, or ordering from your own device. Even if you are in a store, you can always order and pay on your device and just collect the food or any other product. And people prefer that control. Earlier there was an issue that somebody will serve me, more so in India. Today people want control. They are more comfortable choosing and billing for themselves and paying rather than somebody else doing for that. This is a very fundamental change, which is making it again cost effective for companies. Customers are getting control. Obviously there is for countries like India, there's the issue of hence how do you generate employment if technology takes this. But finally consumers will choose what is more efficient for them and what in terms of usage they like. So the companies have to adapt to it.
Both food services and retail, you have a fairly diverse, non-homogeneous workforce. So you have tiered
Right.
qualification, tiered work. How do you view future-proofing this workforce? Because it's not that one size will fit all and you can have one policy or one idea which will serve people who are at a high level, who are managing, and the person in the showroom or at the outlets.
Right. So that's a very important aspect. So basically it will get broken into two. One is who are in a distributed sense manufacturing and delivering product to customer, versus the back office, which is your from accounting to management. So as far as the distributed portion is concerned, even then that is tiered. Earlier each level would have its automatic ceiling based on education, but today, because many people can learn later, not necessarily do. So you may have class 10th or 12th plus which have hired, then along with work, if they do a vocational course or a graduation, and then in some cases management education, they can grow through ranks. And that is happening across industries. That is a good way of retaining people rather than training new people. And we have seen that, and especially happens a lot in food industries. If you grow through the ranks, you understand what your team has done because you have done at one point of time, then managing the team becomes very important. And so that is one change happening. There are still limitations to that, but it's happening increasingly. As far as the back office or the support side is concerned, that's where we are seeing impact of digital in a big way. The way we work across locations or even across functions. So all kind of whatever impact of digital way of working applies to that, and hence also what is happening is on one side there is a war for talent, other side there is huge unemployment. So how do we match them? How do the companies still get the people they need with certain basic aptitude and attitude, and then teach the work skills on a continuous basis as they evolve is an issue and challenge that we are also seeing.
Now let us take a short break. When we come back, we will hear three more thought leaders share their ideas on talent in the Indian context and where we are headed.
You are listening to a Show How To audio original. Podcasting is one of the fastest growing content marketing avenues today. We can help you exploit this largely untapped marketing opportunity. We can craft your audio strategy and leverage the wide reach and easy streaming capability that smartphone penetration provides. It is powerful and personal. Talk to us to find out how podcasting can help you build your brand and reach out to target audiences.
Welcome back. Let's hear from our guests again. Sanjay Jha, Chief HR Officer at Mahindra First Choice Wheels.
So that brings me to the next point. With this kind of transformative change impacting the automobile industry, what is the impact on your team? What kind of changes are you seeing, and how do you personally see tackling those challenges?
I can clearly see two changes happening at leadership level and people at large level. So let me first of all discuss about people at large, and then I'll come to leadership level. So at people at large level, reskilling and upskilling, and then that too in expeditious manner will become very, very important. And it will not be so easy. From the way we are currently training people, that will undergo severe change, because there will be always pressure on people to learn quickly. But same time, people would be expected to learn while doing the things. There will not be luxury to send people to classroom. So the way we are training our people, that will undergo change. And becoming technology savvy will become the order of the day. So this will happen at people at large level, and because of that, because of this speed, because of the requirement for reskilling and upskilling, one will be required to be open to new changes, flexible, agile, and adaptable. And that is why it will be very, very important for leaders to move from the supervisory role to the role of coach, the role of mentor, to role of somebody who could counsel, who could facilitate, who could help the employees to explore the self journey. Their job would be to help and quickly help the employees to go for reskilling, upskilling, becoming open to taking the new challenges, new role, and keep on experimenting. Failing will be fine, but not experimenting will be crime.
Our next guest, T.N. Hari, Head of HR at Big Basket.
You have actually worked with multiple companies with very diverse workforce, right from the grassroots to the board, and you have been looking at their needs and their training and processes. What do you see changing from your vantage point?
So let me broadly talk about the different categories of workforce that you mentioned, which is the blue collar, less educated, and then extremely white collar, extremely talented, very high pedigree of education. I would say these are two extremes, and in many ways I have straddled both of these. So let me just start with the blue collar. I think, India is a youthful nation, young nation, and every year you have 12 million plus youth entering employable age. So you need to find jobs for these people. Now, from time to time, you keep hearing, in various summits, industry, investor, government summits. At the end of these summits, you find very grand announcements that, so many 100,000 crores are being invested, so many jobs are being created. But just think of the reality. Most of these investments consume about 4 crores of capital to create one job. So if you create 12 million jobs a year, you require 12 million into 4 crore rupees, which is about 15 times of India's annual investable surplus. So you need 15 years of annual investable surplus to create 1 year's job requirements.
Right.
See that this approach is just not going to work, which is a very, very capital intensive approach for India, is not going to be able to create jobs. You can just create less than 800,000 jobs through this approach. So with this kind of capital to back job creation, limited capital, majority of the jobs that you're going to create will be largely blue collar. So the reality for India is that it is very difficult to become a prosperous nation like a nation in Europe or the US. We will get out of poverty and be able to provide a large number of people meaningful and reasonable livelihoods in our lifetime. That definitely is possible. Likely that we will ever be able to create 12 million well-paying jobs. Imagine a country like India and China together with 2.5 billion living an American dream or American lifestyle in years' time, we will destroy the planet. Every single resource on the earth would be consumed.
Right.
Say that reality for India as a nation is that you will have a large number of blue collar jobs. We'll have to ensure that SMEs, I would say the biggest job creators are not going to be the big companies. They would be the small and medium enterprises and startups. Government seems to be, laying out the red carpet for the Nokias and, the Xiaomis and the big companies which create a handful of jobs. I think government needs to create a level playing field for SMEs and startups, and the government needs to do this. So that's from the blue collar perspective. From a white collar perspective, the high end kind of work, I think India's education system in some ways is going to come in the way of this upper crust of society being very effective, because we have been used to, being told what to do. Entire education system is not about good appreciative inquiry. It's not about being open. It's not about, being able to do multiple things. We are constrained. If you take physics, you have to take math. You can't take, literature combined with physics. You can't take design combined with mechanical engineering, UX design, for example.
Yeah.
I think as a result of which our talent tends to get very boxed.
Our next guest, Kalyan Banerjee, focused on exploring the future of education.
You spoke about interdisciplinary knowledge. Would you like to expand any more on, interdisciplinary knowledge, or how competence needs to be redefined? Would you want to expand upon that at all?
Yeah, sure. I think future is interdisciplinary. If we look at some of the biggest problems that the planet is facing, clean water, clean air, clean energy, and so on, not to speak of jobs and livelihoods, or even clean food and agriculture. The problems are actually interdisciplinary, and solutions need to be interdisciplinary. We are not able to make progress probably because one thing, of course, is we are not looking beyond our narrow interests and beyond our interests of the next few years. But it is also because we are not being able to see the whole problem. For academic convenience, we have divided our academic programs into different subjects. And even within engineering, we have divided into multiple different kinds of engineering. But that is not how nature works. I just recall another work by another great man, Howard Gardner. Now, Howard Gardner is the author of the concept of multiple intelligences. And among his many books, one book is titled 5 Minds for the Future. And there he lists 5 competencies which are necessary to be successful in the future. What are these 5 minds? The first one is the disciplined mind. Now, by discipline, he doesn't mean that punctuality or dressing well, which is one meaning of discipline. By discipline, he means expertise, or say in the sense that electrical engineering is a discipline. So he says that you have to be extremely good in one area. So now, many people have said this, and when we discuss many other attributes of future proofing, somehow very often we forget the foundations. The foundation is expertise. You need to be extremely good in some area. And he said that it takes at least 10 years to be an expert. The second mind is the synthesizing mind. We are getting multiple patterns and signals all the time. Can we sift the signal from the noise? And can we construct our own narratives and stories? If we are able to do that, then we get an insight into the future, into what is really happening. And that capability is the synthesizing mind. One good example of a synthesizing mind is Sherlock Holmes. He sees bits of paper, some paper that he concludes is some cigarette, or he looks at the boot marks on the mud, or he thinks of the dog that did not bark, and then he constructs a story. So that capability to construct that story from these apparently unconnected bits of information, that's a synthesizing mind. In my mind, the periodic table is one of the greatest examples of the synthesizing mind. Prior to the periodic table, all these elements, they looked very different with all very different characteristics. But this great man, the synthesizing mind, he comes and he makes it into one table. And then you can interpret the table. Unfortunately, synthesis is not so much taught in our schools or colleges. We focus on analysis. Analysis is the opposite of synthesis. You have a complex problem, and how can you break it down into simple problems and then tackle the simple problems? And then the complex problem also gets tackled. The third mind is called the creative mind. Now, we understand what is creation and what is creativity, so I will not dwell on this. So one needs to be creative. The fourth one is the respectful mind. Now, respect doesn't mean in the sense of I come and I touch your feet. But do I respect other people's opinions, other people's perspectives? We are in a world where problems are complex. No one person has the capability to understand the problems, and we need to have that humility to understand that I don't know all. Now, then from that humility needs to come that openness that, okay, maybe other people will have an answer. So this is very important. And if I am not a respectful mind, my learning agility is low. And at some stage, maybe I'll be learning stunted, and I will depend on the wisdom of the past. The last one is the ethical mind. And that's interesting because today a whole lot of people believe that ethics and success don't go together. But here is somebody with a Harvard background and, very respected with his research. And he is talking of the ethical mind being critical to success in the future. You get a plumber who comes to your house. Now, how do you select the plumber? You don't select based on degrees. So degrees is the hard way to select, but that's not the way you select. You select based on reference. You select based on past performance. And in the knowledge and services industry, now that's how it happens. So if somebody is not ethical, he or she may succeed for a while, but eventually, reputation will catch up with him or her. So I think these are very, very important. The fifth one is the most important because, you won't see the results immediately. But the reputation you have built over 20 years, maybe that's when it will show in your career.
TalentWise is brought to you by Knowledge Bridge. We produce customized and multilingual visual training content. We have worked on complex processes, products, and skills development for large blue chip brands such as Tata Motors, Mahindra First Choice, Homelane, Epson, Toyota, Citibank, and Consol Neowatt, serving diverse industries. Talk to us for your next custom content requirement and be pleasantly surprised. Call us on 99021 631 32.
We have been listening to industry doyens on their ideas around the future of work and tactical moves around making your team future-proof. There is no silver bullet and not one idea fits all. Our objective is to bring to the surface thoughts and trends that will impact each and every business as we move into the knowledge era driven by computing power. I hope you enjoyed the episode and would request you to share it and rate it at iTunes and Google Play while you download or subscribe. We have an exciting lineup this season and hope to have you with us in this exploration. Thank you for being with us today on TalentWise. We hope we helped you focus on some actionable ideas today. It was certainly enlightening for us. We hope to see you again on our next episode. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast platforms like iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts from, and give us a rating while you're at it. Thank you in advance. This Show How To original podcast is produced for Knowledge Bridge, the multilingual visual training platform and custom training content creators, by Show How to Audio, hosted by Shubhanjan Sarkar and produced by Rajiv Aditya. See you next time.